Hello, my name is Alienora, for those who don't already know that. And today I'm going to talk about the whole business of being given an unusual name. It's had many advantages, but certainly when I was younger, it had an awful lot of disadvantages and embarrassing moments and so forth as well. So yes, the name Alienora, it's very unusual. I am now in my 60s, and during my, 6+ decades of life, I have only ever met one other almost Alienora, and that was approximately 10 years ago when I went to Crete and met a little French girl whose name was Alienore, which is not quite the same. It hasn't got the A on the end. So yes, the name Alienora, I don't know when it originated or where it started. I would imagine it was probably originally French. And certainly my parents grabbed it from the family tree, and way back in the 12th century, so the 1100s, there was a woman called Alienora Fitznichol who married a Browning, and so became Alienora Browning. Fast forward to the 20th century, and as far as I know, there hadn't been another one, certainly not in the family. And so, yes, I was called Alienora. It was really, I can be quite serious about this now. It was, in many ways, it was absolutely ghastly having so unusual a name when I was a child. I was a very shy little girl, wasn't a very sort of lively little so-and-so, certainly not when I was at primary school. And I used to be teased mercilessly by a group of nasty little children. And it was mainly focused upon my name, although probably they just didn't like me anyway. And I used to have people sort of standing around me and laughing and taking the mick. And yeah, it was horrible. As I got older, I think by the time I was at secondary school, I think the bullying had died down a little bit, although there were still people who thought it was absolutely hilarious to gather around me with their little friends and say, Alienora, Alienora, like that, or Alienora, or Eleonora, or just take the mick. And I will admit that I didn't exactly change my name, but I started calling myself Ali when I was about, 16 or 17. And that very much became my name, I would say, until my 50s, until I left teaching. I mean, everybody, when I was a teacher, called me Ali. And a lot of them, I suspect, didn't even know that Ali wasn't Alison, it was Alienora. And it was only, as I say, really when I left teaching approximately 12, 13 years ago and started getting my books published, that I finally came to terms with this very unusual name and began to see a kind of beauty in it. And now, when I look at my books with Alienora Browning written on them, I feel really proud of my books, but also, I suppose, proud of myself for persevering with what has been a really difficult name. So this book, for example, Under Carda Idris, Alienora Browning. This book I'm really proud of because, as I've said before on this channel, it did win a first prize. And back in the day when I actually won that prize of 200 quid, £200 for those who don't understand what quid might mean. I mean, that was a fortune back in the 1980s. And I can't remember what I spent it on, but knowing me, I will have spent it fairly quickly and probably on something completely unsuitable. So yes, I'm very proud of this book. And when I look at this, I think to myself, I have grown into that name. And now when I look at myself, I think, yes, I am an Alienora. This is who I am. And I still get, people taking the mick, people can't always pronounce it. And to be fair, you know, the first 5 letters do spell out alien, which is perhaps a bit of a giveaway. I was going to, as I so often do, give up on this channel because I'm finding it so difficult to actually get out to an audience wider than myself. Wider than myself, that makes me sound like 10-ton Tessie. Not that far off, actually. But it's very difficult. And when I look at videos made by other people who get hundreds, nay, thousands of views per day, I just think to myself, they've obviously got some kind of magic that I don't have. Should I, for example, and this may just be a series of rhetorical questions, should I be putting on makeup? I don't very often because it irritates me. I'm not actually allergic to it. I just don't like the feeling of it. It feels claggy. Should I be making myself look younger? Should I be wearing, I don't know, revealing garb or dresses, or, should I be making myself look more like a sort of an archetypal girly, which, given my age, sounds a bit silly anyway. How is it that some of these people who I've come across are getting hundreds of views and tens, if not hundreds, of followers? What is it that they're doing that I'm not doing? And is there any way I can actually change my basic personality to become someone else? Because I've always been socially fairly inept, and that social ineptness, which did me no favors as a child, finding difficulty joining in with friends, it probably is not the best idea for me to come onto somewhere like YouTube and try my 68 years of social ineptness on a different forum. Who do I think I am? But I am proud of myself for coming out of being a very shy person, stepping away from the sheer embarrassment of being called Alienora, and pushing myself to publish books, to get books published, and to become a writer, which was what I always wanted. I've always had this absolute passion for words, passion for writing, and these ideas that just came into my head and sort of stuck there, like as if I was sort of in a prickly bush or something, and wouldn't go away. Words flowing like water into my mind, and it still happens. I haven't actually written a book for a while, but I can still feel sometimes whole paragraphs, whole chapters descending and sort of waiting for me to do something with them. And I love that. I think it's great. Aren't I lucky to have reached my late 60s and my brain, insofar as I've ever had one, still to be vaguely intact? We take so much for granted, don't we? We take for granted our health, our minds, our creativity, our friends, our family, and yet everything is so fragile in our world. And I really do feel that I'm incredibly lucky, as I say, to have reached my late 60s, to still be vaguely compos mentis, to still be having ideas for the next book to write, still to have friends, and to be launching myself on a platform that I actually find quite scary and confronting, and I'm going to swear, bloody well doing it anyway. So yes, Alienora. Don't forget the name. It's only the 5 syllables, for goodness sake, Alienora. And don't say Alienora, or I may have to get nasty. Okay, that's quite enough for one day, especially as probably nobody's going to see this. So bye.